Hello everyone. Back again with film recaps. In this video, I'm going to recap one of the thriller survival films from 2024, titled Eden. Before we get to the storyline, I'd like to wish everyone a happy and great day. Without further ado, let's get straight to the storyline. The movie is based on true events from 1929, when the global economy collapsed in the aftermath of World War I. Amid the chaos, a couple, Dr. Friedrich Ritter and Dora Strauch, leave Germany and travel across the world to the desolate island of Floriana. The world gradually learns about Ritter's isolated existence through letters, which are occasionally picked up by passing ships. Ritter's mission is to write a new philosophy to rescue humanity from itself, and he believes that the true meaning of life is suffering. The scene then cuts to many years later, where we see a family consisting of a married couple, Margaret and Heinz Whitmer, and their son Harry. It turns out Heinz is deeply inspired by Dr. Ritter, and the family has sold all their possessions to move to the island in pursuit of a new life. We then learn that it is the winter of 1932, which means it's been 3 years since Ritter and Dora arrived on the island. Soon after, the Whitmer family introduces themselves to Ritter and Dora, who are visibly irritated by the newcomers. Heinz eagerly shares that the doctor's letters have been published in newspapers, making him a major sensation in Germany. Ritter then leads Heinz to his garden, where he rants about how difficult it is to survive here. He tries to scare the newcomer, warning that the island is home to wild pigs, dogs, and cows. He also states the island has no water source, just 2 small springs that catch rainwater. Next, Ritter loads the Whitmer family's belongings onto a pet donkey, which Dora loves dearly. He then leads them to a cave deep in the hills, and states they can sleep there without getting wet, though the water supply is extremely scarce. Before leaving, Ritter warns them to return the donkey by night, or Dora will have their heads. That evening, Dora tells Ritter she doesn't like these people, as she finds them useless, who will need a lot of help. But Ritter reassures her that he placed them in the cave, where it's impossible to grow any crop. He's certain they won't last, and will leave before the rainy season, which brings visible relief to Dora. In the following days, the Whitmer family works tirelessly to make the place livable. They face harsh conditions, particularly at night, when Margaret is terrified by the constant sounds of insects and wild animals. They eventually construct a water pipe to collect fresh rainwater after putting in a lot of work. One night, Margaret informs Heinz that her period is already 3 months late, implying that she's pregnant, which makes him extremely happy. The next day, both families carry on with their usual chores when suddenly, a gunshot rings out in the distance. Ritter looks through his binoculars and notices a boat approaching the beach, which clearly annoys him. Shortly after, the boat arrives, revealing a woman named Eloise, being carried by her 2 lovers, Rudy and Robert. Eloise is enthralled by the island's beauty, and discusses establishing a luxury resort. The 3 of them then excitedly head to the water, where they start getting intimate, while their servant Manuel watches with confusion. Later, Dora is working in the garden when she's visited by Eloise and her lovers. Eloise introduces herself as a Baroness, and reveals that they are looking for the infamous doctor. Just then, a naked Ritter appears outside, and Eloise excitedly admits she has always wanted to meet the man who tamed nature and created his own kingdom. She claims that everyone she meets, including presidents, prime ministers, and philosophers, talks about the brilliant man who extracted his own teeth to avoid cavities. Ritter inquires as to where they are camping, to which Eloise responds that it's at the beach. But he warns them that there is no water, and he knows the perfect place for them. Later, we see Eloise and her lovers bathing in a pond and laughing playfully. But when the Whitmers arrive, they're furious with the newcomers for bathing in their only source of drinking water. Eloise calmly apologizes, claiming she had no idea, and introduces herself as their new neighbor. She reveals her plans to build a resort, with Rudy as her engineer, and Robert as her bodyguard. She then hands Heinz some letters, stating that some are for the Whitmer family, while others are for Ritter, and politely asks him to forward them. Later, Heinz hands the letter to Ritter, but it turns out that the envelopes have already been opened. Ritter becomes irritated, wondering why Eloise did not hand them the letters when they met earlier. Dora suspects she did this on purpose, hoping they'd think Hines had snooped through their mail, and end up turning against each other. With this, an angry Hines goes to confront Eloise, and questions why she's trying to pit him against the neighbors by opening their letters. However, Eloise calmly responds that the doctor did the same thing, by showing her Hines's water source rather than his own, because he wanted them to fight. She then shows him her grand plans to build a luxury resort here, claiming it will be an exclusive place for millionaires only. But Hines doubts if it's even possible in such a harsh location, which leaves Eloise visibly offended. The scene then cuts to the spring, where we see the Whitmer family halfway through building a house. Things seem to be going well, and Margaret excitedly shows her husband their first vegetable. But their peace is suddenly shattered when Eloise shows up with her lovers to camp there, because the beach is unbearably hot. This clearly annoys the Whitmers, but the Baroness assures them that she'll only stay until her resort is built and Rudy discovers a new water source. Days later, we see Rudy growing increasingly frustrated, as he fails to find a good spot to dig a water well. He returns to camp, only to be further irritated by the sound of Robert and Eloise loudly making love. Moments later, Eloise steps out and asks Rudy to heat a can of corn, but he snaps, revealing they don't have any. He angrily rants that they have no food, no garden, and no hotel, and it's her fault for dragging them here with no real plan. Hurt by his words, Eloise runs into the woods. The next day, Margaret is alone at home, while her husband and son are out in the woods hunting. Robert and Manuel watch from a distance, keeping a close eye on her and the house. Suddenly, Margaret feels a sharp pain in her stomach, which she finds odd, given that she still has weeks before giving birth. When the pain intensifies, she desperately calls out for her husband, but he's not around. Margaret then sets out to seek help, during which Robert and Manuel quietly slip into the house to search for food. Shortly after, Margaret arrives at the Baroness's camp, calling out desperately for Eloise, Rudy, and even Manuel, but to no avail. We notice Eloise and Rudy inside the camp, but they ignore her. At the same time, the thieves find canned foods in the house, and start stealing as much as they can. But they are forced to quickly hide, as Margaret returns home while groaning in pain. With no other choice, she lays some newspaper on the ground, and braces herself to give birth alone, while the thieves watch from hiding. Just then, she hears a cow mooing and heads outside to check, giving the thieves enough time to escape. Margaret's situation worsens as several wild dogs appear around the house, and begin barking at her aggressively. The poor woman, already racked with pain, fights them off with a broomstick, but the dogs are too many. Meanwhile, Eloise grows annoyed that the men brought so little food, which will only last a few weeks. Here Manuel frantically reveals that Margaret is giving birth alone and that they should help her, which Rudy also agrees with. But the cruel woman forbids them from going, insisting they are here to help her, and no one else. Meanwhile, the pregnant woman's water breaks while she's trapped among snarling and vicious dogs. She summons all of her strength and screams at them to back off, before finally giving birth to her baby. Margaret is unable to defend herself when the dogs try to attack her newborn, but Hines and Harry finally arrive and fire shots in the air that finally chase the dogs away. Fortunately, the baby seems healthy, but Margaret's condition quickly deteriorates. A desperate Hines then rushes to find Dr. Ritter and begs him to save his wife. The doctor refuses at first, but when Dora requests as well, he reluctantly agrees to help the Whitmers. Upon examining Margaret, he discovers the placenta is dangerously stuck in her uterus, and now he urgently needs hot water and a spoon to fix the problem. Meanwhile, Manuel, who has been secretly spying, rushes to Eloise to inform her that the doctor has arrived to help Margaret. The news infuriates the Baroness, who fears the neighbors might now become allies. She scolds Manuel for not stopping the doctor, and even says he should have hurt the man. Fed up with her madness, Manuel finally snaps and calls her an evil woman, prompting Eloise to fire him on the spot. Elsewhere, Ritter skillfully removes the stuck placenta, finally saving Margaret's life. The scene then cuts to summer, when the entire island has dried up. Ritter continues to write, but he struggles to come up with original ideas, as they all sound like copies of other philosophers. Elsewhere, Rudy approaches the Whitmers, and begs for food since he hasn't eaten in days. The couple kindly invites him to share a meal, during which Rudy shockingly reveals that Eloise is not a real Baroness, and she has copied her entire persona from movies, including her accent, title, and even stories. He further explains that her parents kicked her out for being a terrible woman, and how she ended up working as a cabaret dancer in Paris, where she met Rudy and Robert. Sometime later, a ship arrives at the island, carrying an expedition team led by a man named Alan Hancock. Eloise hurries to clean the camp, believing that this man might be her ticket to get off the island. We soon learn that Alan has arrived to meet Ritter, and has also brought much-needed supplies and food for everyone. Later, Eloise slips into a stunning dress, and approaches Alan with effortless charm. She soon discovers he's not just an explorer, but a renowned and rich Hollywood movie director. In the evening, Alan organizes a small party, during which he congratulates the doctor for his bravery, the Whitmers for Floriana's first child, and finally Eloise for her beauty. After dinner, the expedition team packs up to depart the next day, so a desperate Eloise attempts to seduce Alan. He politely declines, but the cunning woman fakes chest pain and places his hand on her breast, claiming she's suffering from loneliness. Upon hearing this, Alan bursts into laughter, and makes it very clear that he's not interested. He then bids her farewell, leaving Eloise astounded that anyone could reject her. The next day, the ship departs without her, leaving Eloise deeply disappointed and worried. In the afternoon, Ritter discovers that the supplies Alan left have all been stolen by Eloise, which makes him furious. He then approaches the Whitmers, and says it's time to choose sides. With this, Ritter and Hines head to Eloise's camp with rifles, demanding she return the stolen food. But she obviously refuses, and even mocks Hines for believing that Ritter would ever share the food with him. Here Robert pulls out a gun and tries to shoot them, but Margaret intervenes to prevent any bloodshed. Upon returning home, Ritter is consumed by rage, and begins shooting at his typewriter. After that, he declares he's going hunting and takes the last canned food for the trip. Dora protests, saying it's meant for the chickens, but Ritter argues they can eat the rotten scraps before storming off. Later that day, Rudy is having dinner with the Whitmers when Eloise arrives outside and asks to speak with him privately. The young man reluctantly meets her, and she hands him some food and clothes, saying he's free to leave if he wants, as she never intended to hold him back. Rudy becomes emotional and kisses her, then asks if there's anything she wants him to do before his departure. Around midnight, the Whitmers wake up to strange noises coming from their garden. Hines steps outside with a rifle, and shockingly discovers their water has been stolen. He fires a shot in the direction of the sound, but as he looks closer, he's horrified to realize it's actually Dora's beloved donkey. The next day, Dora notices that her chickens are sick, and begins to panic when she realizes her beloved donkey is missing. She approaches the Whitmers and asks if they've seen him, but they all pretend to know nothing. This devastates the poor woman, and she drops to her knees, so Hines quickly helps her and takes her home. There, Hines speaks privately with Ritter and tells him what happened. They soon spot Robert spying from the bushes and running away, making them realize it was Eloise who orchestrated the whole thing. Furious, the two men go to confront Eloise, but on the way, they find Rudy. He immediately apologizes for everything, and confesses that Eloise forced him to steal the donkey. He admits all he wants is to go home, so the men end up forgiving him. When Hines returns home, he sends his wife and son into the woods to gather grass, as they need to reinforce the roof before the rainy season. Next, Ritter, Rudy, and Hines go to confront Eloise and demand she come out of the tent, but she refuses, and instead Robert storms out and immediately begins attacking them. He is brutally strong and overpowers all three men one by one. He nearly kills Rudy, but Hines intervenes just in time to save him. Hines stabs him multiple times until the man finally collapses dead. Moments later, Eloise exits the camp, now pretending to be Robert's victim. She claims how controlling he was, and that she has been desperately trying to get away from him. She then offers the three men to get an equal share in her resort, since they've proven their worth to her. However, no one buys her act. And then this happens.
Let's make it official. I'll go get a pen.
Ritter coldly shoots her in the head, and the gunshots are heard by Margaret. Afterward, the men dump the two lifeless bodies into the water, and decide not to tell their partners anything. The next day, Rudy approaches the two families, claiming that Eloise and Robert have left on a ship, and even left a letter behind. But the women immediately sense something is off, because Eloise leaving her valuable possessions behind feels impossible. Even Ritter pretends to be suspicious, making Hines increasingly uneasy and scared. Rudy then sells some valuable possessions to Ritter to get some money and finally leave this place. Later at home, Margaret confronts her husband, saying she knows those two are dead because she heard the gunshot. She checked his rifle last night, and it was fully loaded, meaning it was Ritter who fired the shot. Here, Margaret is certain that the doctor is going to write to the governor and blame Hines for the murders. That way, he'd get them arrested and be alone on the island again. Hearing this, Hines gets remorseful and asks his wife to leave him, but Margaret confidently states that she won't let anyone ruin her family. Elsewhere, Dora seems fed up with Ritter, and announces that she has decided to leave him. Dora reveals that they came here to accomplish something significant, and now all he does is waste his days trying to outwit neighbors. Ritter claims that those people ruined his life, but Dora responds by saying he ruined his own life, and calls him a traitor. Later, Dora is in the woods when she runs into Margaret, who's heard about their sick chickens. She offers some healthy chickens and even eggs, but Dora refuses her. Margaret then urgently warns her that Ritter is a dangerous man who most likely murdered Eloise. But Dora refuses to believe it, and insists the doctor has devoted his life to nonviolence. Before they part, Margaret warns her not to cook the sick chickens, as they're full of poisonous toxins. Meanwhile, Rudy is on the beach when he spots a small ship, and immediately swims out to approach it. He pleads to be taken to Isabella, but the captain says he doesn't have enough fuel to reach there. But when the desperate Rudy offers him 200 sucres, the captain changes his mind and helps him aboard. Elsewhere, Ritter has finally gained a breakthrough in his writing and come up with a new philosophy. He excitedly shares it with Dora, who then suggests celebrating this moment with some chicken. Later, she deliberately feeds him the spoiled chicken, which Ritter eats without any suspicion. Hours later, Dora approaches the Whitmers, saying Ritter has become very ill and needs their help. They soon arrive at the house, where a shocked Hines wonders what happened, but before Dora can say anything, Margaret states it's food poisoning, which is an innocent mistake. Later, as Ritter is on the verge of death, Dora mocks him by saying that he's now immortal. He then uses the last of his remaining strength to curse at her before finally passing away. The scene then cuts to autumn, when the governor arrives on the island to investigate what has happened. It turns out Ritter had indeed sent him a letter, claiming it was Hines who killed the Baroness, but Hines insists that he is innocent. When it comes to Margaret, she firmly defends her husband, but the governor reveals that Dora also confirmed Hines was the murderer. However, Margaret argues that it was Dora who killed Ritter, as it's unlikely a man who survived 4 years on the island would suddenly eat rotten chicken like an amateur and die. She also reveals that she had given Dora healthy chickens the day before, but the latter deliberately didn't use them. Unable to resolve the case, the governor decides to leave the island, and Dora also agrees to go with him. However, the Whitmer family decides to stay, believing that the island has become their true home. Before the film ends, it is revealed that the bodies of Eloise and Robert were never found. Dora returned to Germany, where she died of multiple sclerosis in 1943. Before her death, she published her version of the events on Floriana. Margaret responded with her own book, which contradicted Dora's account. Rudy never made it to Isabella, as he and the captain were found 150 nautical miles from Floriana. It turns out their boat had run out of fuel and drifted off course. Finally, Margaret lived on the island until her death in 2000, at the age of 96, and her descendants run a small tourist hotel on the island until today. Okay guys, thanks for watching. See you again in the next video.